So yeah, let's move on to how Trey Lance is going to affect this offense and not really affect, but transcend this offense. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they utilize him. Now, what we've seen early on in training camp is they are running the ball a lot with him. They're using a lot of RPOs. They're using a lot of play actions. I think we're going to see this offense mold into a very very heavy run team, and that's always been expected after this pick. But also a team that is going to take a lot of deep shots down the field, which was a question mark heading into the draft and stuff when you talked about Trey Lance. Is okay, well, what about throwing the ball deep? And you saw some spectacular throws on his tape where he's hitting guys double, triple covered, and at the back pylon of the end zone, where he's just throwing absolute dimes. But then you also see some where he completely airmails the ball and it goes deep into the sideline. It's not even close. But I think that we've seen an improvement in throwing the ball deep, and this is a team where there's two wide receivers here, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. Both of them can stretch the field. I know we didn't see that from Deebo that much last season, but you also have to consider that he was nursing a pretty serious hamstring issue, and he was not moving at the speed that he was normally moving at in his rookie year. Like his sprint speeds were way lower, and he wasn't running nearly as fast. And it makes sense. That's what happens when you have a hamstring injury. You're hampered in that mode. So I think there's two guys that can legitimately stretch the field. We saw Brandon Ayuk's ability to get open in pretty much any single area of the field, and we've seen that Deebo, if he gets into the open field, one-on-one with the safety, or it's him against another guy, he's probably going to win that battle in the physical department. So I think that we're going to see an offense where we're going to run the ball maybe second most in the league to the Baltimore Ravens, and we're going to take shot after shot after shot down the field. You see how much play action plays a role in this. You see, they're going to be using a lot of quick passes at the line of scrimmage. It's going to be, I think it's going to look, I don't know, who do you think it's going to look like most? Because I think it's going to be really different than most of the offenses we've seen, not only with the 49ers, but just really throughout the NFL. So what are you kind of expecting this offense to look like, and what do you see in the breakdown? Do you think it's going to be this heavy run scheme with a lot of play actions, slants, bubbles, and then just deep shots down the field, or do you think it's going to be a more balanced attack?
I think they're going to use the run to build up the throw. This Ravens team two years ago, when they took the league by storm and they broke the rushing record and they had like 5 guys with over 500 yards, Lamar led the league in touchdown passes that same year. So that's a great example of how being able to run it down people's throat brings the safeties in. And that's when you beat them deep. That's when you get the long touchdowns. And Lance, I think, is probably the best deep ball thrower in this class, him or Zach Wilson. And I mean, it fits what he wants to do really, really well. I think you're going to see a guy like Deebo be the 3rd or 4th leading rusher on this team. I think a bunch of different guys are going to get a lot of different carries because they each bring something a little bit different. You got a guy like Mostert who's straight speed. Sermon's a little more patient, not quite as fast, but a little bit more power. Deebo is really just an athlete who can do really anything out there. And a guy like Elijah Mitchell, if he makes the roster, even brings something different. And then there's the guy who will be on the field every time, which we both hope is going to be Trey Lance. Who I think, regardless of whether he starts or not, they're going to have a specific red zone package for him that will be put out, I would say, 90% of games. And I think that he's going to be on the field every single game, at least in some capacity, whether he's used as a decoy. He's too good not to play. But even he brings something in the rushing department that is different than what the Ravens had with Lamar. Lamar's much more of a speed guy. I would say what I'm expecting is a mixture of that Panthers when they had Cam, some Ravens with the running so many different people. But this just allows Kyle to do really what he was born to do is to design an offense that's not limited by anything. Lance can throw the ball, he can run the ball. He has 4 different running backs if you count Deebo, who can do pretty much anything that he wants to do. Running the ball, throwing the ball. You got two solid receivers, and potentially a third, because Mohamed Sanu is apparently back to Falcons form. He was a guy that we hadn't really touched on as that number 3 receiver spot. But he's looked awesome during camp. And to top it all off, you got the best tight end in the league and an offensive line who I think everybody would probably agree is top 10, definitely top 10, probably top 5 in the entire league. One of the best tackles. I'm so excited to watch this Niners offense work, and I think it's going to be it's going to pull from a bunch of different places, but create something that this league really has never seen before.
I completely agree. I really like the two teams that you brought up when you're talking about the Panthers with Cam when he was younger and able to really like throw with a lot of velocity, because they would take the top off of the defense and they would throw bombs. And then also you saw all that power running scheme. And then you brought up how in the Ravens offense, it's a lot more speed. I mean, Lamar Jackson, his running style is not similar to Trey Lance's really at all. Lamar's more of a guy that goes and makes everybody on the defense miss him, and then he'll take to the house. Where Trey Lance is just going to go right to the middle of the defense, run over a linebacker, run over a safety, and take to the house. So a little bit different styles there, but both very productive. I will add one team that I think the offense will resemble a little bit. And this is also like, remember, Kyle Shanahan is going to keep, the core of his offense. And we're not trying to say that, but really like what's going to be added to this offense, I think that's what's exciting is you're not getting rid of the Kyle Shanahan offense. No, you're keeping the Kyle Shanahan offense and you're adding wrinkles of what other teams have done that's been successful, which is really just what NFL, schemes are. That's really all it is. That's what it's been for the entirety of the NFL and entirety of the sport of football. But one other team that I think that you could bring up would be the Eagles when Carson Wentz was at his best and when they had Alshon and when they were running all of those RPO type plays, because they were doing so well with that. And a lot of the reason they were able to do so well is because that was when they were running the ball pretty effectively. If you remember the Super Bowl run, they were running the ball over a lot of teams. And that was what, allowed them to get to the Super Bowl. They had a good defense, and the RPOs were just a nightmare for defenses. So, and we brought this up in a past segment, but they've been running a lot of RPOs in practice. And if you start using RPOs like that, if you have Debo on a slant and you run an RPO and the linebacker steps in because he thinks Trey Sermon's about to go up the gut and you hit Debo on that slant, Debo is one-on-one with the safety. We've seen what he's done to safeties in the past. He has really just decimated them. And it's been brutal if you're a safety and Debo's, running right at you. So it's really exciting. This is going to be the most dynamic offense I think that we've seen with Kyle Shanahan. Maybe not this first year either. It might take a couple seasons, and that should be expected. I know that everyone, including us, is freaking out about how great Trey Lance has been, but he's still a rookie. There's still going to be mistakes. There's still going to be, early. Say he starts early on the season, there will be in that first month of throw where everyone's like, dude, what is he doing? He threw that right to. Well, I mean, we've seen Jimmy do it with the linebackers quite a bit, so it might look like that. But there's gonna be some head scratching moments early on. I will say the one thing I'm a little bit worried about is wear and tear with that physical running style, because we saw how that took a toll on Cam Newton. And when you were kind of talking about it, one of the questions I was going to ask you is how many rushing attempts will we see from Trey Lance? And I was initially thinking over 100, and I hope that's not the case. I hope you only see a handful of rushing attempts from him, and I hope it's more of him extending the plays and then more just keeping the defense honest, because it has taken a toll on a lot of rushing quarterbacks. So I am a little bit concerned about that. I also don't want them to just not let him run the football, because that is one of his biggest strengths. And I think that's what we're going to see from him early on. I think that's what we're going to see in the red zone. And a lot of people were like, oh, really? You're going to draft a quarterback 3 and then use him like Taysom Hill? He'll never be used like Taysom Hill. He'll be used like Trey Lance, who's a lot better than Taysom Hill is and, or ever will be. So I think this is going to be by far the most dynamic offense we've seen with Kyle Shanahan. And I don't think you're going to see the volume that the Ravens ran Lamar with or that the Panthers ran Cam with. But I do think that you'll see the effectiveness of that, in full effect, where, yeah, he might only run the ball 3 times, have 3 design runs on read options a game. but one of those he might take for 20 yards. One of those might be at midfield. He might take it to the house. Like, that's where I think it'll come in play. And what we've seen is the 49ers love to run the football over and over and over again. And you keep doing that, and then eventually Trey just keeps one, or, George Kittle falls on the ground and then gets up and runs a huge post, because we've seen him do that a few times, and he's wide open down the field. I think you're going to see a lot of that stuff. And this offense really has a chance to bring in so many different, have so many different ways of scoring that I just don't think that we've seen. And even on the Falcons team, because that offense was amazing. That's one of the best offenses in the history of the NFL. Like, statistically, it is. And this offense can do a lot more. Maybe, they don't have a Julio Jones. We think Brandon Ayuk can maybe become close to that, but Julio Jones is, 1 in a million. Now, they do have George Kittle, so that kind of, doesn't really make my point really clear. But it's going to be really cool to see what they add. And this offense, while it might not, they might not be able to air out the ball as well as the Falcons did, they're going to be able to run the football and scare defenses into forcing guys in the box a lot more. But anything else on this offense, Aiden?
I actually disagree with you a little bit with how much I want Lance to run the ball. At the risk of sounding callous, like, these players are people. Like, you obviously don't want to risk injury at all. Most quarterbacks that have gotten hurt, Cam is the guy that popped in my head immediately. He did not get hurt running the ball. He got hurt getting sacked, and it hurt his shoulder, and that's really the reason. And Lance is also a guy who has only played one year of college. And, like, be honest with yourself. Would you rather have Cam's career with an MVP, a Super Bowl appearance, or a guy like Phillip Rivers, where maybe, like, obviously super different tools, but Cam at his peak was the best player in the NFL. Won an MVP. That 2015 Cam season was absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, I lean towards let's run him as much as we can. Obviously, you don't want anybody to get hurt. But, like, running backs are lasting longer. Guys like Frank Gore wants to play next year. He'll be 40. That's crazy. Adrian Peterson, multiple major injuries, still chugging along. I think that this idea that running backs are going to fall off at 30 is a little bit misguided. And they're also getting, how many carries does Derrick Henry get a season? What, like 300? The dude is just chugging along. So I think 150 is probably a little bit high. I'd shoot for 125. RG3 got 120 during that rookie year. I don't think he's going to hit 1,000 rushing yards every season. And I think that they're going to save it for the red zone more than anything else. And I think, based on situations, if it's 3rd and 1, you need that quarterback, regardless of where you are on the field, to be able to pose a rushing threat. Jimmy's not a guy that really did that, but I think Trey can do that. And I think that you brought up a really good point, and this may not be the best that we ever see them. We've seen kind of these flash in the pan seasons, specifically from the Ravens two years ago, and then teams figure them out the following year. I think it's more important to build the structure rather than reinvent the wheel with the read option and the Greg Roman. And they obviously had success last year. They made the playoffs, but they weren't the juggernaut that they were the year before. And I mean, we saw that with the Kaepernick stuff. Teams catch up. So I think to be able to build on what you have, and rather than start something new, just make it impossible make teams choose how they want to lose. If you want to stack the box and try to stop the run, fine, we'll beat you deep. If you want to stop the pass, we will take 5 yards of play and crush you down the field. I'm just so excited to see what Kyle tries to do. Trey Lance has been running the ball a lot during training camp, which could be Kyle could be Kyle being sneaky and being like, we're gonna run him, and then they run him less. But he's probably running once to every 3 passes, which is super duper interesting. And the volume is similar to the Lamar. Lamar has in his 3 seasons. That first year, he played in all 16 games. He ran the ball 150 times during that MVP year, 175, and last year 160. I think that they have very different running styles, so Lamar is going to take less hits and going to get out of bounds. But I think 120, 125 would be perfect. That averages out to what, somewhere around 10 and 8-ish a game. And if you save those for the red zone, hopefully we're getting to the red zone a lot. I mean, the teams have to choose how they're going to lose, and that's how you build something sustainable going forward, which I think is really the most important thing.
I think that's a great point. And also, anyone listening, if you guys think that the 49ers should keep it, because I would probably say I would be around like 70 to 80 carries a year. That would kind of be like my ballpark number. If you guys think that's more accurate of what we're going to see, or you think Aiden's right, where it's going to be around the 120s, and I think it could easily be both. I definitely think that's a fair point. Also, something I didn't really bring up is we're talking about guys getting hurt. I thought it was excellent that you brought up how Cam Newton actually got hurt in the pocket. And it's kind of like the awkward angles that you fall down on. Trey Lance is huge. There's a reason why Lamar has to get down a lot more than some of these guys. Same thing with Russell Wilson, like these smaller quarterbacks. Trey Lance is bigger than a lot of linebackers, like Cam Newton was, and that's why they were able to do that with Cam. So I think that's a great point, but I think that's going to do it for today's episode. So I want to thank everyone for listening. Also, we're going to get some more reports on, other guys coming into or out of training camp. Aiden, you mentioned Mohamed Sanu looks great. Brandon Ayuk is looking like he might be a top receiver in the league, which I was hoping was going to be the case, and it's really starting to look like that. But we'll get you guys posted on those guys after this episode today. But make sure to sub and make sure to follow us for 49ers content all season long.